When we think about the crucifixion, we don't normally think of Daniel. After all, Daniel is in the Old Testament. How could it possibly add a layer of meaning to the crucifixion? But Jesus himself quoted from Daniel when he expressed the significance of his trial and impending death to the Sanhedrin during that fateful Thursday night around 300 AD. So let's take a look at Daniel and discover the meaning of the crucifixion. I'm Michael, the Bible ReThinker, and it's time to rethink. Daniel is a very unusual book. It seems to defy category. It was written very late, perhaps as late as the 2nd century BC, and it wasn't included with the prophets in the Jewish Bible, which were all written much earlier. The book was originally written in Hebrew with sections in Aramaic, but the Greek translation included some additions which are only located in the Apocrypha. It is difficult to be certain if Daniel was one person or perhaps a composite of several individuals. Either way, he represented the challenges the Jewish people faced from their captivity in Babylon down to their suffering in Judea under the Seleucid Empire. The themes of enduring in the midst of suffering meant this book loomed large in the imaginations of Jews during the time of Jesus. It helped them shore up courage and stand against the Roman Empire. The emphasis on the book of Daniel was reflected in Jesus' frequent recitations from it. The book of Daniel clearly took a large place in his own imagination, including when he self-evaluated his own anticipated death and resurrection. One of the most well-known stories in Daniel is when the titular character refused to submit to Darius' decree and continued to pray 3 times daily to the one true God, as all devout Jews did. As a result, he faced the lion's den, where rather than being devoured, God miraculously delivered him. He rescued him from the lions. It is probably intentional then that the very next passage deals with a vision concerning the advent of several ferocious and dangerous beasts and monsters, the first of which was a lion. In chapter 7, Daniel has a vision where he saw the great and tumultuous sea, already a picture of danger, chaos, and evil to the Jewish imagination. And while gazing upon the sea, he saw a series of monsters emerge from it. Daniel tells us the first was like a lion, and it had the wings of an eagle. I watched until its wings were torn off, and it was lifted from the ground so that it stood on 2 feet like a human being. And the mind of a human was given to it. And there before me was a second beast, which looked like a bear. It was raised up on one of its sides, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. It was told, "Get up and eat your fill of flesh." After that I looked, and there before me was another beast, one that looked like a leopard. And on its back it had 4 wings like those of a bird. This beast had 4 heads, and it was given authority to rule. After that, in my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was a 4th beast, terrifying and frightening and very powerful. It had large iron teeth. It crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. It was different from all the former beasts, and it had 10 horns. While I was thinking about the horns, there before me was another horn, a little one, which came up among them. and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. This horn had eyes like the eyes of a human being, and a mouth that spoke boastfully. We'll come back to these beasts in a moment, but the text suddenly changes locations, and now Daniel is standing before God, who is about to render judgment upon these terrible monsters. Daniel recalls, as I looked, thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was as white as snow. The hair of his head was white like wool. His throne was flaming with fire, and its wheels were all ablaze. A river of fire was flowing, coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands attended him. 10,000s upon 10,000s stood before him. And the court was seated, and the books were opened. God rendered judgment on the beasts. And then this happened according to Daniel. Then I continued to watch because of the boastful words the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain and its body destroyed and thrown into the blazing fire. The other beasts had been stripped of their authority, but were allowed to live for a period of time. And so all these vicious and ferocious beasts would meet their end to the great relief of humanity. And finally, a new character arrives on the scene, quite different than what we have seen before. Daniel relates, in my vision at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshiped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. Man was always intended to rule over the animals, and the earlier images were an inversion of the Creator's intent. But now things were being set right, and the beasts were under the rule of this Son of Man. But what on earth is the book of Daniel trying to say with all this bizarre and disturbing imagery? Well, chapter 7 goes on to tell us that the monsters represented 4 successive evil empires. These are empires that inflicted terrible suffering upon humanity. Which empires was he referring to? Well, some church fathers believe the 4 beasts were referring to the Babylonian, the Mede, the Persian, and the Greek, respectively, with the final horn representing the tyranny of Antiochus Epiphanes IV, who ruled the Seleucid Empire, which had broken off the Greek Empire. Alternatively, some church fathers believe the beast might represent Babylon, Persia, Greece, and then Rome, respectively. But getting overly focused on correlating these monsters is to miss the point. The world has continually suffered at the hand of evil empires, but God renders judgment on those empires to the relief of all humanity. But how will this happen? Enter the Son of Man. Now, later in the chapter, we are told the Son of Man isn't just a person, but rather a people. The monsters each reflected both specific leaders and the nation they led. The Son of Man was a representation of Israel as a whole. More precisely, the holy ones, the devout Jews like Daniel, who suffered at the hands of a tyrant, were collectively the Son of Man. The hope was that God would judge the nations and put these holy ones in their proper place to give them an everlasting kingdom. And the Son of Man was the personification of the people. But in the meantime, the pathway to the everlasting kingdom lie through a path of tribulation. Jesus was born into a Jewish culture whose hope was kept alive through the retelling of stories such as these. He lived in a world that suffered at the hand of the Roman beast, the oppressive monster that had harmed so many of his people. 3 times throughout his ministry, he pulled his disciples aside and told them they were going to Jerusalem where, quote, the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and flogged and crucified. On the third day, he will be raised to life. End of quote. The disciples always seemed to be quite puzzled at what Jesus was saying, but hopefully to us, his meaning is becoming more clear. Jesus was going to play the role of the Son of Man. He was going to suffer at the hands of the pagan empire, just as Israel had in the past. He was going to suffer, but then he would ultimately be vindicated by God. When Jesus was on trial before the Sanhedrin, they demanded he tell them if he was the Messiah, the Son of God. He replied in part by telling them, quote, from now on you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven. End of quote. His meaning was unmistakable to the Sanhedrin. And that is what precipitated such a radical response. The high priest tore his clothes and declared Jesus had committed blasphemy. Why did the high priest take such offense? Jesus had just called himself the Son of Man precisely at the time he was being mistreated by the Jewish leadership. It was as if Jesus was saying they were not collectively part of the Son of Man, but rather they were one of Daniel's monsters. The monsters in Daniel had all gained their power through ruthless destruction of other nations. But Jesus was going to gain all authority through suffering. He was the Son of Man of Daniel's vision. After laying down his life, he would be resurrected from the dead and would come on the clouds of heaven. If you recall from Daniel's vision, he saw the Son of Man coming on the clouds from the vantage point of the heavenly scene. In other words, Jesus is not describing a descent to earth from the clouds, but rather an ascent from the earth on the clouds in order to rule with all authority in heaven. And the pathway to that authority requires that Jesus walk the path of suffering. Earlier in Daniel chapter 2, Daniel interpreted the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. Quite similar to the passage we looked at earlier, the vision involved a large statue with 4 distinct parts that each represented a kingdom. The statue is shattered when struck by a rock that represents a heavenly kingdom that will be established on earth. The rock will grow and grow into a huge mountain until it eventually covers the whole earth. All the kingdoms of Daniel's vision are gone. But the heavenly kingdom, manifested in the worldwide church, remains. The kingdom was built upon the rock of Peter's confession. And Jesus is the King of it all. But it all starts with the cross. The suffering at the cross is the means by which the image was shattered. It was how the four beasts were defeated. They faced judgment for what they did to Jesus and what they did to God's people. Since Jesus took his path and laid down his life, at the end of Matthew, he could say with confidence, all authority on heaven and earth has been given to me. How did he reach this point? By giving his life on the cross. I want to give a big thank you to our members. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to go deeper in the scriptures, then visit my website with the link down in the description.